It has taken 2 years to prepare. The Trump administration now unveiling its plan for bringing the Palestinians and the Israelis to the negotiating table. Already, skeptics are voicing concern, saying the American side is using money to bribe the Palestinians. The plan, as envisioned by the Trump administration, is to gather momentum behind efforts to commit $50 billion for investments in Palestine. Money that primarily is expected to come from other Arab nations, principally in the Gulf. This part of the plan is being discussed this week in Bahrain, where participants will talk about projects and conditions for investments in more detail. Then, based on the outcome of this meeting, the next step would be to fashion a political settlement that would translate financial commitments into reality on the ground in Palestine. But key Palestinian institutions are not attending the Manama meeting. For example, the Palestinian Authority, which is arguing for a reverse order, a political settlement first, money later. An approach that would tackle the difficult questions of establishing a Palestinian state, end the Israeli occupation of Palestinian lands, and allow refugees to return. The Israeli government is also not attending the meeting, at least not officially. The man who is spearheading the plan is President Trump's senior advisor and son-in-law, Jared Kushner. And today, at the White House, he sits down on Talk to Al Jazeera to explain the Trump administration's strategy for bringing peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Mr. Kushner, great to have you on Al Jazeera. Thank you very much for the time. I just wanted to briefly start by asking you, what does doing this interview at this time with Al Jazeera mean to you?
Thank you. Well, it's an honor to be with you, and thank you for coming to the White House. And we're excited. We leave in a couple hours to go to Bahrain for what will be a very exciting workshop. But we thought it was very important to speak to Al Jazeera. It's been a great voice in the region and somebody that we've been working with, and we're hopeful that this will give us the opportunity to have a direct line to a lot of the people in the Middle East.
Now, the workshop in Manama, what will be your metrics for measuring the success of it?
So I think it's already been a success in the sense that we have every country coming from the region. We have a lot of countries coming from throughout the world. Despite people who tried to get them not to come, they're all coming, and that's a very big first step. The second step is that we've been able to get some of the top investors and people from throughout the world to come who are showing interest in helping the Palestinian people in the region. Right now, we have a lot of investment funds that won't invest in the Middle East because it's not stable, they don't have peace, they don't have security. And so what we want to show people is that there is a great potential and a great future for this region if it's possible. So we laid out our vision a couple days ago, and that's starting to get a lot of discussion in the region. And we hope at this conference we'll be able to further discuss it, figure out where people agree, figure out where people have different suggestions, and then hopefully form a real consensus around what the potential could be for the region if there is a peace agreement.
So how will you tally your metrics for measuring success with the metrics that others, especially the skeptics, may have about the success of the Manama workshop?
I think that with the whole peace process in general, people are right to be skeptical. It's a problem that has been unsolved for many, many years, and what I find is a lot of the criticism we get are from people who have tried to do this in the past and who have failed, and then they criticize us for not doing it the same way that they've done it. Again, the president is not a traditional politician. He wants to do things in a different way. And if we can get people through this process to look at this problem differently and to see what the future can be, then I think that could be a very, very big successful thing. We laid out our vision. We put it on our website. It started to circulate. We've seen a ton of downloads and internet traffic on it in the West Bank and in Gaza and throughout the Middle East. And that's great. We need to start the discussion. And what we want is people to see that there can be a very bright future. This plan calls for $50 billion of investment, both between private capital and low interest loans and grants. We want to build all the necessary infrastructure, and we want to make sure that these different industries are stimulated. If we do that properly, we believe that this plan will create over 1 million new jobs in the West Bank and Gaza. We think it could reduce the unemployment rate to single digits, and we think that it could decrease the poverty rate by 50%. Those are all goals that we should really strive to. They cannot happen without a peace agreement, but without a real plan, prosperity doesn't just happen. Prosperity has to be planned for, earned, and executed very vigorously.
So you've obviously packed a lot of information and goals in there. We'll try to unpack them. individually. But let me ask you first, it's one thing to get people to come and attend the workshop, but when the rubber, so to speak, hits the road, that's the real challenge. So how will you apply those metrics to the reality when the reality actually begins, if it does begin to be a reality, in terms of getting that money, dispersing it, and pumping it into projects?
Right. So a lot of the pledges that have been made in the past have not been fulfilled. And I think that's because there was never really a product design for let's all agree on the front end for what we're going to try to do with the capital that comes in, and then let's make sure we have a mechanism to monitor that it will actually go through. We believe in rewarding results, not in rewarding efforts, and I think that if we can get everyone to buy in on the front end to what an economic plan could be, then I think that will make it much easier to get people to all agree to invest capital, and then hopefully make sure that that follows through. Nobody knows more about broken promises than the Palestinian people. There's been more promises that have been made to them and broken to over the years. The one thing about President Trump is he's one of the few leaders people have seen in that region who actually keeps his promise. Whether you like his decisions or you don't like his decisions, people know that when he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. And one of the things he said is he wants to see this conflict come to an end. He wants to help the Palestinian people, and part of this is his vision for what he can do to really create a different paradigm in the region.
So obviously the Palestinians and others in the wider Arab world on this issue of the President Donald Trump's promises, they will say he promised and he delivered to the Israelis. He promised to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and he lived up to that promise. But at the same time, promising that to the Israelis, to the Palestinians, that's tantamount to trying to kill their dreams for having their own capital in Jerusalem.
Yeah, so recognizing Israel's capital as Jerusalem has been law in the United States since 1996. It was passed unanimously. Israel's a sovereign nation. A sovereign nation has the right to determine where their capital is, and America has the right to recognize the decision of another sovereign nation, which is what we chose to do. That is a promise the president kept. Another promise the president kept is to get out of the JCPOA, the Iran deal, which has been a terrible deal, which has caused a lot of destruction throughout the region. Another promise the president made is that he would destroy ISIS and take back the caliphate, and he's done that too. So the president's kept his promises that impact all people throughout the region. With regards to the Palestinian people, when the president moved the embassy to Jerusalem, he said that this should not impact final status negotiation issues. We've been working very carefully on a very detailed proposal for what we think can help bring this conflict, which has been stuck, forward, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to put that out soon, and hopefully parties will be responsible, they'll engage on it, and they'll try to move forward.
And now, beyond the workshop in Manama, I mean, is President Donald Trump committed to actually helping the Palestinians achieve their own independent state, as they claim, with Jerusalem as its capital, to help them deal with the issue of Palestinian refugees and their return? Political things that are very important to the Palestinians. Is President Donald Trump, and are you, Jared Kushner, committed to that?
So we are committed to trying to find a different solution for the region that moves people forward. And again, what President Trump is focused on here in America is how do you improve people's lives? How do you give them security? How do you give them prosperity? There's a lot of different ways to do that. The reforms that we've done here in America have led to our economy being incredibly strong. The president looks at this region and he says he doesn't want to think through traditional lenses. He wants to think about how do we take all of these people, let them live together, let them live securely, and let them live with real opportunity and hope. So we're not going to discuss the political components in this workshop. We're going to be doing that at a later date. But I can assure you that President Trump is committed to bringing real prosperity to the region and also bringing safety to the region. You see that in his actions with ISIS, you see that in actions with Iran, and you see that in terms of all the ways that he's been fighting to kind of make the region more safe.
Let me take you back to the Manama workshop for a while. Now, the Middle East crises, they blow up unexpectedly sometimes. How will you convince, or what guarantees will you give to the people who will be attending the Manama workshop that if they pledge money or investment to build Palestinian infrastructure, that money will be well invested, given that in the past, in conflicts between the Israelis and the Palestinians, Palestinian infrastructure was destroyed. The government in Gaza is a good case in point.
Right, and when the infrastructure is destroyed and the investment stops, who suffers the most? The Palestinian people. And so I think the question you just asked makes my point entirely, which is that right now the region is not investable in a way that it needs to be. In order for it to be investable, we need to resolve these core conflicts. We don't resolve these core conflicts by being firm on a position without finding a way to compromise and to negotiate. What we're trying to show people is that if there is compromise and if we are able to find a resolution that's fair to both sides, we can create an apparatus where there's security and where there's prosperity. These investors, a lot of them are showing up because they don't just want to create returns, they want to see this area do better, they want to see an opportunity. But these are also people who are not going to be investing if they think that their good money is going to go after bad money. And there's a lot of examples in the past how investments have been squandered, how infrastructure has been destroyed. But again, that's because of bad leadership on behalf of the Palestinians, and it's also because we're in a situation where there's conflict. If we can end the conflict and we can resolve the issues, then that will lead to better lives and more opportunity for the Palestinian people.
Now, when there's conflict, as you know, obviously the Israelis blame the Palestinians and the Palestinians and their supporters blame the Israelis. That leads to the criticism, at least from the Palestinian side, that by doing Manama first, you are putting the cart before the horse. They are arguing you should try to settle some of the political questions in order to stave off conflict, then pour money into the infrastructure.
Yeah, that's been the traditional thinking, and that has not worked. I mean, we are where we are today, and the way that people have thought about this in the past, it hasn't worked. So what we've tried to do is help people identify what a future could look like. And hopefully we get people to all agree on what a future could look like, and then we get people to look at maybe let's commit to the future in the event that there's a peace agreement. Perhaps that will create a different condition through which people can then approach some of these political issues that have been unresolvable for a very, very long time.
How much financial commitment, if you're able to say, did you actually get from the rich Arab states, whether in the Gulf or elsewhere? The fact is they are principally in the Gulf.
So this plan with the $50 billion actually will require less annual contributions to the Palestinians than we have on an annual basis to date. So for a lot of the donor nations, not just from the Middle East, but also from throughout the world, right now they keep giving money every year. The people's lives are not getting better. There's no plan to ever resolve it. What we want them to do is figure out how do you all buy into one universal plan, and then let's start investing in a way that will actually lead to a domino effect of people's lives getting better. You know, for years and years, there's been money thrown at this problem, but there's been no accountability and people have not been held results. Some people are fine with the status quo. They've done very well from it, but the money has not trickled down to the people and their lives have not gotten better. We need to create a new framework because what they've done in the past has not worked.
Mr. Kushner, address for me a little bit the criticism leveled at you by the Palestinians at the workshop, the Manama workshop in particular. They are saying that basically the Israelis got the recognition of Jerusalem as their capital, for example, and now you are telling them, the Palestinians, that we will give you money, which they call, as you know, they call it a bribe. And on top of that, they say, this is a lot of money coming from Arabs going to Arabs, in this case, the Palestinians. Can you address that?
Yeah, I think that, you know, people mockingly call this the deal of the century. I think the plan that we've laid out is actually the opportunity of the century. You talk about the Palestinians like they're a homogeneous body. What we have is we have a lot of Palestinians since we put this out who are calling us saying, this is phenomenal. What do we have to do to get this? We want this. This is exactly what we need. Thank you for taking the time to put together such an in-depth plan. Thank you for getting the world interested in seeing that the way that they've been doing it to date has not worked and for highlighting a way forward. So from our point of view, we think that this is a step forward because we want people to discuss new ideas, look at this problem differently. And again, you know, people who come with criticism, it's very easy to say what you're against. It's much harder to say what you're for. And what we've done is we've done the hard work. We've studied this problem. We've studied all the global economies that have been successful over the last 75 years. We've studied economies where it's failed. We've drawn from the best ideas. We customized this plan for what will work here. We've built it off of a lot of the great work that's been done in the past. And what we've done is we've put forward a very credible, substantive, detailed plan for how to move forward. And then what we'll do is we'll refine it. Again, nobody's got a monopoly on good ideas. We'll refine this, we'll get buy-in, and then we'll go and we'll try to address the political solutions. But what I do know is that a lot of the people who are criticizing are not people who have been constructive. These are people who have been involved in this for a very, very long time. And these are people who have not found solutions and who have not helped to make the Palestinians' people's lives better.
Did you incidentally invite any input while preparing for this from the Palestinians themselves in terms of the concept as a concept?
So a few things. One is the reason we're doing economics first before the political solution is that they're both very in-depth documents that we put together. And we were told that it'd be too much to digest both at one time. So we're putting this forward knowing that we would get criticism that we're doing this without the political. But like I said, you can't execute these economic plans without having a political solution. So the advice we got from people in the region was to put this out first, and we thought that that would get people to focus on this so that when they enter into the political discussion, they have this in context. And again, over the last 2 years, we've engaged extensively with a lot of Palestinian leaders, a lot of Palestinian business community, a lot of people throughout the Middle East. We have not been trying to impose a solution on this region that we think works. We're trying to draw from the region all the best ideas and then help people create a new framework to discuss these issues that have not been able to be resolved in the past.
But did you get any input from the Palestinian Authority?
We have had, I'm not going to comment on discussions we've had with them or haven't not had with them.
Now, the Palestinian decision not to attend the Manama workshop, is that a blow?
Not at all. Look, it was fairly predictable. What they've been saying is a lot of very hot rhetoric about rejecting everything before they even see it, which is not, in my opinion, a very responsible position. The responsible thing is to say, we've been trying to do this for 25 years. We have not made any breakthroughs. If people are coming and they're trying to spend the effort to create a blueprint for us to be able to have a better future, we'll engage with them and we'll listen. For whatever reason they think it's better politics for them or a better policy to say all the things they've been saying, but I don't see how their actions are going to lead to their lives of the people getting better. I know that when President Trump takes decisions or makes statements, he's always looking at it through the filter of, will this keep the people that I was elected to represent safer? Will this help them have more opportunity and live a better life? But right now, quite frankly, I'm not sure I understand what their strategy is, and my hope is that as we put these elements out, they'll realize that there's a lot of good elements here that will help their people have a better life, and they'll engage.
Now, the main beef that the Palestinian Authority has with your plan, as you know, is that they're saying instead of land for peace, instead of the principle of land for peace, you're offering them money for peace. Now, land for peace is the essence, obviously, of the Saudi initiative by the late King Abdullah. How much overlap, is there any overlap at all between your plan and the Arab initiative of the Saudi King Abdullah?
Yeah, so I would say the first part, if that's what they're saying, that's a very uninformed position. This is not money for peace, this is economic prosperity and a business plan if there is peace, right? So the peace has to stand on its own, but you can't just sign a peace agreement after all these years of fighting, then all of a sudden love each other and move on with life. You have to be able to articulate what a future is that could be exciting for people. If you think about it, for the Middle East, the unifying feature of a lot of the Arab world over the last 70 years is the hatred of Israel. And they've used that often to deflect from a lot of their own shortcomings internally. And so Israel is not the cause of the problems throughout a lot of this region, throughout a lot of these places. The problem is bad governance. The problem is lack of opportunity for people and lack of investment in the right way. So again, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to figure out what is a framework for moving forward. You mentioned the Arab Peace Initiative. I think that was a very, very noble effort when it was done in 2002. The Arab Peace Initiative says that there's no military solution to this conflict, which I think is a very important recognition. It has to be a negotiated solution. The parties have tried negotiating for a lot of years. It hasn't worked. So what we've tried to do is figure out a new framework for this to happen. The political plan will be very in-depth. We'll put that out at the right time, and we hope people will judge it on its merits as opposed to rejecting it before they even see it, which again is not a rational construct in terms of how to approach trying to make the lives of your people better. So again, the purpose of Manama is to bring people together, show that there is a lot of potential for this region, show that a lot of the greatest investors in the world do care about this issue, care about the Palestinian people, want to be here, in the event that we can create a peace agreement and a stable environment where capital could be invested and opportunity could be realized.
Now, another point on the Arab initiative, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, is on the record as saying that he thinks that Israel has the right to retain some of the West Bank. To the Palestinians and others in the Arab world, that is a death blow to the two-state solution. Is the two-state solution still a viable solution for you and for President Donald Trump?
Yeah, so right now, for Manama, we're focused on the economic aspects of what could be possible if there is a resolution. But what I will say is that, all of the people I speak to, they talk about the Arab Peace Initiative, and again, it was a great effort. But if that was where a deal was going to be made, a deal would have been made a long time ago. I think we all have to recognize that if there ever is a deal, it's not going to be along the lines of the Arab Peace Initiative. It will be somewhere between the Arab Peace Initiative and somewhere between the Israeli position. And we need to think about what are the fundamental things that are underlying and important. Number one is security, right? I think the Israeli population and the Palestinian population and the broader Middle East right now cares a lot about have security. The more you have security, the more you could have freer flow of goods, freer flow of people. I know that's a very big issue for the Palestinians. They want to be able to move through the borders. I think the cost of goods are too high because it takes a long time to get through the borders. But there's a direct correlation between the ramping up of terror and the threat to Israel and the slowing down of the borders. And so, if we can create an environment where there's actual peace, and again, peace comes from compromise, and we'll figure out what the right elements of that are at the right time, then that is the necessary precondition to be able to implement a lot of the economic reforms that we're going to talk about at this conference.
Now, for the Palestinians, as you know, the main problem at this particular point in time, they say, yes, the economy is a problem, but the main problem is the Israeli occupation, what they describe as the lack of real, genuine Israeli interest in peace. They say, for example, that Rabin was killed because he was interested in peace, and he was killed by an Israeli, not by a Palestinian. So what do you say to that?
Well, I think there are Israelis that say that the Palestinians have no interest in peace, and there are Palestinians that say that Israelis have no interest in peace. That's what a negotiation is. People start with different positions, they start out with sides, and again, if we want to find a pathway forward, that means both sides have to find a place where they both feel like they can gain more than they give and then move forward and have the opportunities to live better lives. This has been spoken about for a long time. A lot of the leadership that's been condemning the efforts and trying to tell people how this should be done, these are the people that have failed. And so you look at where the people's lives are today versus all the money that's gone into this area over the years, it has not trickled down to the people in the way that it should be. So I think it's time to try something new. And again, what we're trying to accomplish at Manama is we're trying to figure out how do we get people to look at this problem through a different lens. When I traveled through the region, I shared the economic vision with a lot of the different leadership in the different Arab and Muslim countries. And the result was they said, this is fabulous, this is great work, this is fresh thinking. What we should do is bring everyone together, let's present it, let's not make this an American project, let's make this a regional and a global project where we can all come together, share ideas, agree on what it can be, and then let's figure out how we can create the right political environments that we can execute it.
I have 1 minute left of the allotted time, and I really appreciate your time. Now, after Manama, after the workshop, what happens after the Manama workshop? What are the ABCs of what's going to happen?
Right, so the first part is we want to get everyone together, hopefully get feedback. We've gotten a ton of fabulous feedback so far on the vision that we've laid out. People love the depth of it, they love the detail of it. What we hope to do is engage in a discussion on all of the different components, and then what we'll do after that is we'll figure out how do we do some follow-up and then bring the world together to agree on what an economic plan could look like going forward. Once we have that, I think then that creates the precondition that's necessary in order to have a real discussion about the core status issues and the political issues.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.